Labadiena, tinklalaidės tarp juoda ir balta klausytojai ir žiūrovai, sveikinuosi su jumis aš, Viktorija Čmilytė Nielsen, ir šiandien mano pašnekovas jau ne pirmą kartą dalyvaujantis mūsų tinklalaidėje, Peter Heine Nielsen. Hi Peter, good to have you here again.
Thanks a lot for inviting me back, Victoria.
Yes, well, last time we spoke that there's still quite some subjects that we want to discuss, and I cannot help but noticing that you are very colorfully dressed. So does it have something to do with the World Cup in football taking place?
Very much so. As you probably saw this morning while you were preparing to get ready for work, I was watching Norway against Senegal. I mean, the World Cup is also always something very special, I think, of course, for a football fan, but even beyond that, it's the world's biggest sport event to quite some extent. So that's something I've followed intensively for my whole life. And well, it's Norwegian shirt, and I am Danish.
Yeah,
so
and how does it feel for a Dane to root for Norwegian team?
Well, to root, I don't know. But it feels difficult, of course, because we have made so much fun of Norwegians the last 28 years, where they didn't qualify and Denmark did quite well. So yes. This time it's their year, and they've started incredibly well, winning 2 games. And I thought, you know, I mean, well, they say if you can't beat them, join them. So I've decided to become a Norwegian fan, at least for the moment, I would say.
Oh, that's a good point. But transferring a little bit to chess, what about Scandinavian rivalries or partnerships in chess? How do you generally think about strong chess players in a Scandinavian sense? We spoke a little bit about it previously, that of course Bent Larsen was the big star and is still, well, prior to Magnus Carlsen, this symbol of not just Danish chess, but Scandinavian chess, Nordic chess. What about others? I
mean, I don't think there has ever been, you know, a strong rivalry in that sense. I mean, of course, let's say at Chess Olympiads, well, we enjoy being ahead of the other teams, and we'll make a bit of teasing and fun. I would assume it's very similar to what you would do in the Baltic countries, right? But somewhat. I think, well, I guess you know from yourself, right? I mean, your idea was not to be the strongest Baltic player. You had big ambitions like that, and I think we would talk about names like Larsen, Andersen, Pierre Kramling, and of course now Magnus. They go beyond this small rivalry, right? That they are, well, they're trying to be the best chess players in the world. They're trying to have actual success, not just to be the local hero, and that's how it should be. So I think, I mean, of course, well, I was the strongest Scandinavian player until Magnus appeared, and you know, it hurt me a little bit, but if you look at it from my life perspective, I mean, well, it's given me a fantastic job for a long time, but also it has risen the interest for chess, of course, primarily in Norway, but of course also in the surrounding areas. I mean, I have gotten a job, so many have gotten TV job, and so on and so forth. So I think we see it as a win-win, and I don't think we see it as a particular rivalry, although, of course, when I grew up, well, you know, Norway was a much worse chess nation than Denmark, and that has considerably changed, but I mean, I don't think it matters too much. It's mainly about teasing rights, and generally we are quite friendly. And I mean, well, in the beginning I helped Magnus a bit because he was a nice boy. We had fun together and such. And this kind of rivalry was non-existent. I mean, you would help your neighbors because you thought that was the right thing to do. And again, yeah, they are better than us at chess. But yeah, he started beating me at a pretty young age. I actually remember it at some point that. I mean, we had a training camps at his parents' place, and we were playing some blitz. And I think the first time I was there, I was still the better player. The second time, he started beating me quite considerably. How old was he? I have forgotten, but we are probably talking 14 or 15 in that sense. And I thought, okay, let me pull myself together. And maybe I did, but it didn't change the result. So that ship had sailed at that point. But again, as it should be, I mean, I was a pretty good player, but well, he's the best player in the world for quite a while, so that's cool.
You know, speaking of chess and sports, chess of course being one of the sports, when I was a young player and generally looking back in the history of chess, the sort of the common view of chess players, of professional chess players, were that, you know, you could see them smoking a cigarette while sitting at the chessboard, and that it was something often intellectual, but maybe even a bohemian. I think perhaps less you, but I grew up with the stories of Mikhail Tal, the wizard from Riga, being leading less than a healthy lifestyle, but still making miracles at the chessboard. The reason I bring it up is because I have a feeling that the attitude of strong chess players, of professional chess players towards sports in their life and towards the physical preparation has changed enormously. It's one of the big shifts that happened. But having said that, still you will have, well, what is more important, the way you are prepared physically, or you know, if perhaps, well, you haven't slept so well, but you feel the flow for one reason or another. Because I recall from my own professional chess life that sometimes you could feel that, okay, I didn't do things well, I feel a bit guilty, I feel a bit maybe unsure, but nevertheless you come to the board and you overcompensate by being completely focused. While in other cases you have prepared well, you have slept well, you have ate no sugar and stuff like that, and then you just simply don't get it together. So your thoughts about that?
Well, I generally agree with the notion. I mean, if we go back to, well, you mentioned Tal, I'm grown up with knowing Larsen, and we would have this saying that chess is a combination of science, of art, and of sport. And there was some truth to that. But these days, it is mainly just sport, in my opinion. And that is generally perhaps a good thing. It's a natural development, and well, but it's also perhaps reflecting on some realities we are not in control of, for instance, the developments of computers. I mean, well, chess is still to quite some extent decided by knowledge and understanding of the game. I mean, well, I could play a person who was in the best shape ever of a human being, but if he doesn't know the rules or he hasn't studied chess, it's not going to help.
It's secondary, physical.
So it is quite secondary to a certain extent, but it's still quite important. I don't know. Maybe that goes for many professions. I mean, I guess on average you would do your job better or be a better politician if being in better shape. But of course, being in shape takes some time. So maybe it's not rational. Maybe it's better to do other things in that sense. But I think, I mean, well, let's go back to Larsen, or even from my childhood. Computers didn't exist. You had to study a lot of books to get general chess understanding. It was more difficult to acquire knowledge, and a lot of things were still uncertain. Nowadays, I mean, we just turn on the computer and we know. I mean, well, after finishing watching football in the morning, I thought, well, let me check some old World Championship preparation with a modern computer. And it is striking that these kind of questions we struggled and spent so much energy to solve, now are solved by computers in seconds, right? So, I mean, what at that point was an intellectual struggle to understand certain things, you can just turn on an engine and in a few seconds you know it. And then if everybody will have the same kind of preparation, you have to distinguish yourself from your opponent in some way. And that becomes the sporting aspect. And I think, well, I mean, you mentioned that, you know, you might not have prepared well and so on. But for instance, a thing that I noticed with Magnus, but I also noticed with you, that a strong sporting character, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, Magnus doesn't prepare as well as his coach would like him to do, but he compensates it by being an incredible person at the board. I think the same with you. I mean, well, I think I have a better chess understanding than you, but I think you are a better sports person, no doubt about it. And that has pluses and minuses, and that's why we compete to a certain extent. And I think, well, you know, in a vacuum, perhaps I would like Magnus to care more about preparations, but that would perhaps leave him, you know, less hungry for the game and less energetic at the board. And as a coach, at least, it is fantastic to see him at the board, and that makes it worth it for me, because you can feel he always gives his maximum. And that, I think at some point I asked him, so, well, if you talk about my career, what was my, you know, drawbacks? And, well, you know, he smiled a bit and probably didn't want to insult his coach, right? But said something like, your attitude at the board was perhaps not optimal, which is, well, and I think it's
gentle way to put
it.
Yeah,
it's a gentle way to put it. But there is truth in that, and part of that can come from, physical lack of being in shape and such. But I think also it's a general mentality thing. And I mean, it's going to sound weird to many people, but for instance, with Anand, we were actually quite doing some physical training. I remember us for one World Championship match, we were running up and down stairs a lot because we had this idea that this was healthy.
And was it?
It helped our general state, but I mean, you can imagine us both. Well, one can check pictures. We were, less overweight than we were now, but probably still a bit. And if we make sprints up some stairs, I remember lying there with my pulse going nuts. But luckily, I was young and I could manage, and it very much improved my sort of physical ability at the point. And I think it helped him chess-wise, but it certainly also helped him that, okay, I have suffered for this, I really want to do this, and that quite helped.
Yeah, it perhaps helps your psychological well-being even more than objectively helps your physical well-being. And in chess, so many things are connected to how you feel psychologically. If you feel decently well about yourself, going into the chess game.
The placebo effect must be humongous in such situations, right? So it depends like this. I think also I had one World Cup where I did really well, and I was caring a lot about my physical preparation. I was running like 10 kilometers, and I made a lot of blunders and such there, but it still worked out well. There is a very, very famous video of Kortsnoy preparing with his team for the World Championship, I think against Karpov, one of the matches, and they are running Kortsnoy, Keen, I think it's Steen and someone else, and it looks completely like a Monty Python sketch. They have absolutely no technique, they're oddly dressed, they run very slowly.
The Ministry of Weird walks.
Something like that, and the same, during one of Vichy's camps, we were running together with the team in the park, and I don't think elite sport was the first thing that would come to people's mind if crossing us. But, we do it to that extent, and I think it helps to optimize. But, if you take two persons who is completely equal, then it could have an effect. But, for instance, also Nepomniachtchi playing Carlsen, he said he lost 10 kilos, got in the shape of his life, and he just lost. And I think for the second match against Ding, he thought, okay, I'm not going to waste my time on that. That didn't help. And I think also, but it is pretty random in a way. But
let's go briefly to, healthy lifestyle, not as in sports, but let's say food. And sometimes parents of young players ask me, okay, so, is there some kind of diet that they should take or something like that? And I remember our experience when I played in one World Cup, and you were there with me, supporting me, let's put it like this. And I had a tough tie break, and I love chocolate, but you told me that sugar is not good, which it isn't. Sugar makes spikes and falls in your concentration. And I think it was not even a blitz game, but a rapid game. And my opponent was constantly eating little bits of chocolate. And I remember being very frustrated and upset that you told me specifically it's not a good idea, but she actually beat me in the end. And it was not fair to blame it on you.
I remember where and whom and such, but I'm happy we're still married, right? But I think it's technically, in principle, physiologically good advice.
Yes, but not to eat sugar during games. That's
to
what you're saying.
To a certain extent, and not too much and such. But having said that, I was a much less experienced coach at the time, right? And for one thing is that as a coach, you generally dislike taking on responsibility because, you will end up being blamed when it goes wrong and not remembered when it goes right. So, and you can see you remember it quite clearly, right? But also, that is quite an experience from, I have helped you a bit, but of course it was a different kind of, we're partners, right? But I've been the second for Vichy and Magnus, and what you learn is that you might think you are right and they are wrong, but it really doesn't matter unless it's of incredible importance, because the fight involved in achieving a theoretical and perhaps non-existing edge is not there. Also, the players knows themselves quite well in a way.
So what you are saying is, if you see your player making some sort of minor mistake, it's not necessarily the best strategy to point it out, or at least if you do, you point it out very gently.
I mean, ideally you could try and get your way without the other one knowing, but you have to also believe that it's worth doing in a way. I mean, well, now we talk about food, but let's say, I think, I mean, again, sometimes one will think, okay, this guy is psychologically not strong. Let's work with a sports psychologist. But I think it was brought up once during missionary camps, not by me. And while I supported it in principle, I did not support it at all practically, because I know he wouldn't like that. And, well, if you want to give people advice, they also have to believe it, else it just creates tensions, for instance.
It almost can be taken, I know, well, the subject, because we've also discussed it, and I've known it being discussed by many chess players. Chess players are generally careful, very, very skeptical about sports psychology, which is weird, but it almost is seen as an insult, suggesting that, okay, maybe you should work with which I actually don't subscribe to.
I think worked with one myself. I thought it was great, but that was because I was very curious to do it. And
you thought it could be useful?
I mean, I was frustrated with some things. I wanted to try that. I thought it was very helpful. I thought actually talking with someone who had no knowledge of chess but knew about how to perform made sense for me. But forcing someone else to do it, I think, really wouldn't work. I mean, Gukesh has said that he worked with a very famous sports psychologist for the recent match. And I think most people, even including me, looked like, well, maybe improve some of your positional deficits instead. But, well, the guy won the match, and he seemed to think about that.
And he seemed to
I mean, you were asking about food. I mean, I remember when Magnus was young, I mean, his dad would always, give him a pack of nuts, and he would have orange juice, and he would have chocolate milk, and I think also at some point during a week his dad left, so I had to pack it for him, but I was focused on preparation, so I think at some point, I mean, Magnus' bag was just full of chocolate milk because I haven't packed it properly and such. And I mean, they cared a lot about that. Perhaps also, I mean, it's partly right, perhaps it's also what you are focused on. You see, I'm focused on chess.
But it's also something that parents can actually have control of.
That's like my
so they can actually help with that.
Exact point, that's something they can help with. But I think, I mean, should I do my career over again? Well, I probably don't get that chance, right? But I would have cared more about these things, for instance. I think, for instance, at, let's say, many chess tournaments, the food structure is like that there is big buffets just before the game, and I love food, so I would eat a lot, and I would probably wonder why do I not have a lot of energy during the game.
You feel sleepy during the game.
Yeah, that's probably because I have been eating like a madman, right? And I mean, that I would have liked to change in a way, but but again,
that also comes from chess being seen for a very long time as not a sport, but something else. So when you do something else, well, you don't think of preparation as any kind of, I don't know, football player, basketball player would. Obviously, they would think about their diet, about their sleep, exercise.
We would not get very good advice. Magnus, at some point, when getting close to the World Championship level, was getting some advice from the Norwegian Sports Federation and was listening to part of it. I think at some point he actually stopped with orange juice, and I think because of the sugar content. But let's not get into this fight again.
Of course. But speaking of advice for players, young players, maybe I should say helpers of young players, coaches, parents who know a little bit about chess and really care about being helpful to their young talented kids, often ask what is it that they should focus on. And I know that you work with players of highest level, but nevertheless you have a lot of experience with all ages and all levels, at least as well, having gone through the process yourself and seen other young players mature, for instance. What would you say? Well, it's natural for seconds, for coaches and for kids as well, to focus on openings. Some would say forget openings, start with learning endgame, and then go from endgame to Mittelspiel and openings in the last sort of when you already get to a certain level. I understand that it's maybe too. I'm simplifying the question, but still, I really think it matters a lot.
I get the question quite
Quite often, I think.
Quite often someone
Yes.
will write me. Now I was just on a trip where Magnus was playing in some mixed amateur events, and there was quite some people asking me for this advice. And my general answer is I have no idea. I mean, now you try to say I have some experience, but I've worked with one young player who happened to be the most talented probably ever. So that is, I mean, well, that worked for him, but also to spoil his talent would be very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And I have my own experience, but my feeling is it gets extremely colored depending on who you are. And well, of course, I mean, now, well, you know, we've been married, and of course, I discussed a lot of these things and such, and we have a very different attitude towards it, and that's been interesting for me, and also is changing my views quite a bit. But my general feeling is that there is no general solution.
So you would say that there is no blueprint for success for young players?
No.
That some would say, you know, I only play blitz and I enjoy it and they get better.
I mean,
others are just doing
I had a long
exercises
fight with some in Danish chess who said that blitz is harmful, and I said,
Oh
well,
yes, I remember
I
that.
don't think that's statistically true. If you look at the best players like Magnus, like Nakamura and Caruana and Kayakin.
Well, they famously played...
They were nuts about
Yes.
playing blitz online, and I, for instance, felt it was a huge... I mean, there is 100 reasons. Magnus is just a much bigger talent than me, but he grew up at a time where you could just play blitz online. I had no one to play with. I would, you know, go to the club once a week, and then I was a bit lucky that there was a pensioner who was the strongest chess player in my city.
Yes.
So sometimes I would go to him in the evening. But it's uncomparable to being just able to log on and play blitz.
Okay, but then maybe what you are saying also is that the possibility of playing a lot of chess with players who are stronger than yourself. Perhaps this is the, well, I mean, this is one general thing that always is good.
This was also said in the poker environment. I mean, we have this young kid who plays online, who plays against some famous legend who's been playing poker all his life. And this young kid says, I have more experience than you because, well, you have only played live poker, which is very slow. I'm playing, you know, 20 different tables at the same time online. So I have actually played more games than you. I mean, being able to play online gives you a lot of experience. And I think one could see that some of these who played a lot online becomes incredible defenders because they're used to, you know, having bad positions and they defend them well. There was a famous match between Leko and Magnus when Magnus was quite young. And Leko was completely crushing him in openings with preparation, and Magnus was winning the match easily because he was just much quicker and better in that phase. But I want to make at least my own observation that to be a very strong chess player, what I tell the parents is that there is nothing they have to do. I don't think you can force it through. But what I have seen with all very strong players, well, and let me even just get myself to that category as well for the example, is that you need to have this passion about chess and this idea of how much should I study. It doesn't work like that.
You don't measure that with hours.
I don't think I study. I'm doing things that I find incredibly interesting. I remember, you know, well, I mean, you know, later you get married, you have kids, and you start doing other things. But when I was working for Anand in the beginning, he told me, there's no point to have any free days for you because we had a free day, but you were sitting there analyzing anyway. And that is true. I just thought this was incredibly interesting.
Yeah, but you almost make it sound like discipline is non-existent, and I think it's also not correct, and well, it doesn't reflect reality, because without discipline, without hard work, you will not actually achieve. And this is maybe a difference of our views.
I mean, well, you should invite someone who's worked with Kasparov instead of Magnus, because he might agree with you. But I had this, I mean, at some point I believe your point of view, and I remember when Magnus was a young kid, I told him you cannot become the best player in the world without hard work, and he looked at me and said,
Watch me.
We will see.
Okay,
maybe I made the anecdote, but there is truth in that. And well, the point is, I mean, that's also what, Jon Ludvig Hammer, he's sort of,
Norwegian
of the same
grandmaster.
age of him.
Yes.
I mean, who was, in principle, Magnus' rival very, very early.
Yes.
He said that don't buy the story that Magnus has not spent an absurd amount of time studying chess.
He just didn't
Of course
calculate
it is,
it.
but he was not calculating. It was not something he did. And for instance, when he visited me during summer, we had this kind of training camps, we had a lot of fun. We played football, we played computer games, but we did a bunch of chess. But let's say I needed to go shopping or pay my bills and needed, half an hour rest from this kid sitting there. I knew I could just dump a new chess or a chess book and he would just read it, completely zone out from the world. So that's what I mean with this kind of obsession. I mean, this idea that you can just train even harder. Well, it might get you to some place, but I don't think it gets you to the absolute best. But maybe it does in some sports. I don't think chess necessarily is like that, but I mean, well, it's famous that Kasparov and Magnus worked together, and Magnus stopped doing it because he was forced to do a considerable amount of homework, and he didn't like that. But he doesn't like to have it enforced on him. I mean, that's what I was told also by his parents very early, that, I mean, chess is something, I wouldn't say we do for fun, but we do it voluntarily. So you cannot force him to do things, but it was not a problem because he wanted to do it anyway. So I'm so spoiled of that being my experience. Yes. I mean, at some point I would almost religiously believe that this is the truth. Now I understand there is people who also get success in different ways.
But speaking of those other people, we just have a few minutes. The last time we spoke, it was during the candidates tournament. Candidates is finished, and well, just say a few words about whom you consider today to be the biggest, brightest talents and people who could...
it's so difficult because it changes all the time. I mean, ask me in January, I would say it's obviously up to Satorov. He's such a bright star. Then ask me in March, well, Sindarov just won the candidates in a crushing fashion. Yes. Ask me in June, well, it's obviously Pragnananda. I mean, it's like they said that you should stop giving predictions about computers because you will sound silly very soon. And it feels like that. I mean, at the moment, I'm very impressed with Pragnananda, but it seems so much recency bias. On the subject we just spoke of, I think there are some interesting facts about Sindarov. I mean, during Norway Chess, he was there as a guest, not as a player, but because his girlfriend was playing there. But he was sort of tweeting, okay, actually, I cannot activate my computer game account. Can someone please help me? So we have someone who has to play a world championship who apparently is so desperate that he cannot play computer games that he tweets about it. And he says, I'm pretty lazy. But then I see an interview with him about his coach and says, yeah, we had these training camps for 6 months. We trained 10 hours a day. And well, these things...
They don't go together.
They don't go together. So I mean, I don't think we have a right idea of what is a lot and what is not and such. And well, it seems to work for some of them, but...
well, I just hope that we soon, perhaps we already have that, but that soon in Lithuania we also have that kind of talent who doesn't have to count the hours, but yeah.
I mean,
maybe
such small countries like Denmark and Norway, it feels like we have one in each generation. And well, I think Lithuania had quite a strong player.
You know, it's about winning in the lottery in a way, but I think it's also about spotting those talents and giving them a chance to develop as they should. So thank you so much, Peter, for your insights, and ačiū visiems žiūrovams už jūsų laiką ir iki kitų susitikimų. Thanks.